Thank you, John. I had dinner last night with a couple of gentlemen who between them have maybe 40, well, double that, 80 years in this NDT industry. And I went back to my room last night and decided for this group, I'm going to start at the end, not the beginning. And the slide you see up there, that's my end slide. And I decided to tell you right up front what this is all about. I am vendor neutral. You're not going to see me push any one particular vendor. The issue here is, in the NDT industry, how are the inspectors who are actually performing and operating the inspections in the testing industry, how are they doing it in a way that's compatible with all technologies? This is the real issue, compatibility. How many in here are in level 2, level 3? Okay, great majority. We need to get some women level 2s and level 3s. I've been coming to this digital imaging conference for a number of years, excuse me, a number of years now, and it occurs to me that there's a lot of arrogance among us in terms of the technology knowledge, of knowing what digital really means and how to implement it. I've learned a lot from Steve Mango at Carestream in terms of really taking a humble approach to this technology and what knowledge base is required in order to move into digital. And don't assume anything. This is a matter of change. And what I'm going to go over with you this morning in just a couple of minutes is looking at non-destructive testing industry from a standpoint of a business model and comparing it to another business model that made this conversion from film, analog film, to digital, and has done so successfully. It took them 20 years, but they did it very successfully, and they addressed the issue of how do we make film completely compatible with CR, DR, or CT. Computed radiography, digital radiography, or computed tomography. Let's get right into it. It's very clear. Now, I've borrowed a couple of Steve Mango's informational slides here because he does such a good job. All right, Steve, I plagiarized. I admit it. But the issue here is the information. And the knowledge to go filmless is based on where is digital actually going? What do you have to have as a foundation to go digital? It's very clear that the digital imaging fundamentals are not the same as film. And there are standards pertaining to digital. You're going to hear a lot more about those standards later on today. You're going to hear a lot of presentations today about conversion to digital and using these terms. What I'm talking to you about is the reality of the operations in the field of going digital and what that means in terms of your workflow, your actual workflow. So of course there are standards to digital, and the research, please do your research on the qualified digital systems. It's no different than when you buy a computer system. You go out and do your research, whether you buy it at Best Buy or you would go through your IT department. Do some research. Digital system performance, baselining, and monitoring. Those exist, those standards exist, and they're constantly being refined, especially by the ASNT and the committees involved here. Image quality measures. Those image quality measures matter. Know what those are. This is knowledge. This is just knowledge and research. Easily done with homework. Got to have a certain level of computer literacy. I know that bothers a lot of people. Don't let it bother you. I'm a geezer, older than most of you here, and if I can learn this stuff, you can too. Digital user interface is going to be different for you. The user interfaces today look different and are constantly being refined and more literally friendly. So let's move on. What's so great about digital? What's the big deal about digital? Why can't we stay with analog? Well, digital is better. Why? These are just a few of the benefits of digital. Number one, all the metadata in a piece of film is preserved forever. All the metadata that's in that piece of film, digitally. You can adjust the brightness and contrast. These are just functions, simple functions. You can apply magnification, apply image processing, and on down the line. From a business standpoint, what does it do? What's the big deal from a business standpoint of whatever your businesses are and whatever inspection services you work for and whoever your customers are? Your customers can, when you go digital and you provide them digital files, you're going to save inspection time and the cost of consumables, as well as it improves your productivity exponentially. Everything changes once you cross this bridge. So how do we get there? What's a digital image in the first place? Well, this is another interesting slide that I plagiarized from Carestream, from Steve Mango, but I liked it so much because it tells in one visual what the difference is between an analog image and a digital image. Of course, a digital image is just an array of rows and columns of pixels. Each pixel has a value that's proportional to its exposure dose, producing an analog gray value, basically the brightness that you see on the screen, on the display monitor. Very simple concept, two very different technologies involved. Now, there's a couple of industries that have already passed digitally. Obviously, the obvious ones is photography. Nobody uses film anymore. Not in North America, probably not around the world. And there's another one, the medical industry. Veterinarians, orthopedic surgeons, dentists. Very unusual to see film, although I've had a recent experience where I had to have a bone x-rayed and they actually gave me the piece of film to carry out, and I had to take it to an orthopedic surgeon, and he digitized it and compared it to the output of an MRI. No different than what you're going through right now in NDT in terms of comparing a film, digitizing it, and comparing that output digitally with an original digital file. So non-destructive testing is in slow motion in making this transition. Why? There are so many mitigating circumstances that that's not what this presentation is about. This is about the reality that this tsunami of going digital is inevitable. So you can make a decision as decision makers in your companies to get with it, or you can delay. And you know what happens when you delay. You lose business. So doing the right thing for your customers and the end user is really the key here, and how to effect compatibility. Again, from a business standpoint, down at the bottom, that dollar sign, that's business. Those are business results. What does it do? It reduces the consumables and reworking, eliminates chemical disposal, film storage costs. There are millions of pieces of film that are getting browner every day, stored all across this country, 40, 50 years old, some of which, for liability reasons and legacy reasons, must be preserved, a certain percentage of them. The rest can be disposed of. And of course, there's silver halide in these films. A lot of silver ingots will come out of this film. This is a whole separate business. And the sharing and storing, archiving, and indexing of these digital files is the result of going digital, a big deal. 10 years from now, Boeing will want to look at a part of the 777, which is what, 30 years old now? They still need to look at those parts. And they go back and they digitally look at them. All right, the warehouses full of film reality is something that is a separate business. I want to address you today about the real-time imaging in the field that's going on with radiographic exposure of film, and then converting that to a digital format that's compatible with everything else. Is this going to move? Okay, we're not moving.
You popped up there. You got a thing that popped up.
Oh, how'd that get there?
Hit it.
All right. Yeah, Okay, there we go. All right. So I ask you, from a business standpoint, let's take a little MBA class here in Business 101. How do you explain an industry, an entire industry that converted 100% from analog film to digital? They didn't do it overnight. It took them 15, 20 years. How do you explain that? I learned a lot by going back and studying exactly how that happened. This is medical imaging, converted from film to digital from between 1995 and 2015. Basically in North America, it's filmless, and Japan and other developed countries. All right. So what did they do? They went from immediately jumping from film to digital. Now, they discovered, oh, we're going to make this jump from film to acquiring digital images. They ran into an issue. Oh, once they did that, this is back in the early 90s, what did they do? They found that, oh, when we want to look at prior films, how do we compare that to digital output? Well, that's the story. They had a big problem. Medical imaging had a huge problem. All of a sudden, they came to a full stop in digital imaging. Why? What about the film problem? The film problem became the issue and the stopping point in going digital for the medical imaging industry. Solution? Very simple. Medical imaging industry created, well, here's a more detailed explanation of what the problem was. Comparing film to digital output. The two workflows don't work together. A light box, looking at a piece of film in a light box versus digital output, incompatible. That's the reality. And what's the solution? In 1993, the medical imaging industry created Daikon. What is Daikon? Daikon is a single file format, digital imaging and communication in medicine, where all images from whatever source would be compatible with one another. That unblocked it. And what happened later? 30 to 40,000 medical grade digitizers were sold worldwide and continue to be sold, but it's done here in North America. What was the big deal about that? It unplugged, from a business standpoint, the stoppage of going digital because the need to refer to what? Radiographic films that were being digitized. Keep this concept in mind, and as you study this long trail of 20 years of the medical imaging industry, how they went digital. The result is, of course, medical industry is filmless, and what's the lesson? I left this blank on purpose. What's the lesson here? The lesson is compatibility, folks. It's compatibility. This isn't a competition. They are not competing with one another, film and digital output. No, you just make them compatible. That's the key. And medical taught us this way. So now here, let's look at a short story. That's the non-destructive testing industry. NDT is growing slowly into digital, inevitably into digital. 5 years from now, 6 years from now, 7, whatever, we won't have this discussion. It'll be over. Digital radiography, computed tomography are all growing very nice and slowly, but in slow motion. All right? And at the same time, here it seems contradictory, doesn't it? Industrial film sales are growing worldwide. Why? Because NDT continues to expose radiographic film for various reasons. The need is there to do this. So accepting that is a very simple concept. Don't fight it. So NDT is converting from film to digital. Sound familiar? Another business case. We've been there before, haven't we? Forget the name of the industry. The industry's been there. So industrial film is incompatible with CR, DR, and CT. It's a given, all right? Inspection services are faced with this issue all the time, and their customers are coming at you saying, what about digital files? Here it is. Converting, comparing, evaluating film to CR, DR, and CT files. That just means the issue needs to be faced directly. Level 2 and level 3s, the big issue with inspectors that I found out in the field, watching you operate, is time. You look at so many images, analog and digital, and you look at them so quickly that your evaluations are critical. So the tools you use, and these are just tools, these are only tools to do your job for your customers more efficiently. But your time is limited. This is a big reality for inspectors in the field, which is different from medical. So you're faced with a light box versus digital, incompatible, we know that. The visual quality and consistency issues suffers because they are incompatible. And then there's staff requirements to train them and handle the film itself. This is the real operational issues that any business that inspectors, inspection services are performing are faced with. All right, so to cross into digital, what do we need to do? And if you take away nothing from this little presentation, look at this carefully. This explains what's going on. Film digitizing is integral, or integral, depending on where you were educated, to the digital workflow compatibility. There's that word again. It's all about compatibility. This is not a technical presentation. This is a conceptual presentation about compatibility. So NDT is not a secondary, film digitizing in NDT isn't an accessory. This is an integral part of going digital. And it introduces you and your staff and your company and your customers to digital terms, to digital processing, and the digital mindset, and getting comfortable with it. It's affordable. We have a booth here in the VIDAR booth. You can come by and bring some sample films if you wish. We'll digitize them for you on the spot and give you the files, and you compare your film with the digital output. 100% of the information is there and the metadata captured forever. Archived, indexed, accessible, and of course Daikon D file format. What's Daikon D file format? Well, Daikon D was given birth from Daikon. Medical imaging, they learned their lesson in digital imaging about compatibility. So in 2004, the ASTM established NDT imaging and archiving standard. So it's been around for 11 years now. And still, we, and I mean we as an industry, have done a poor job of educating ourselves and the upcoming level 2s and level 3s in evaluating and understanding the true value of having one single file format for this whole industry, Daikon D. Daikon D meaning digital imaging and communication for non-destructive evaluation. You're going to hear this term the rest of your careers, and the young punks coming up who are 20s and 30s, that's all they're going to know. All right, so looking at this as take this image away with you in your mind, a very simple image. The NDT Film digitizer is the bridge to cross in terms of introducing you and your customer to digital, computer radiography, digital radiography, computer tomography, and all those terms, and the workflow process. So it creates a compatibility path and a single file format. There it is, Daikon D again. This slide right here tells the whole story for me, and what we're continuing to learn and refine about getting this message out to you. So here it is in summary. What's the lesson? Medical film digitizers plus Daikon meant compatibility. It opened it up. They could go full bore ahead. By the way, a little anecdotal fact that many don't know about this. What happened in medical was the hospital administrators in 1995-96 started demanding that all vendors provide with their proposal of DR or CR a film digitizer, because they wanted to look at the industry and what they were doing digitally from a landscape point of view, not a portrait point of view, which focuses in on, let's say, a headshot versus the whole group back here. Radiography, computer radiography, all the rest. You see what this is. So compatibility is the path of industrial or X-ray film digitized in one single file format, Daikon D. So there it is. So now we end at the beginning, crossing the digital bridge. I want to leave a couple minutes here for Q&A or concerns or issues or just discussion. Because you inspectors, I know, are faced with these issues of compatibility files and how to present this situation to your customers. So anybody brave enough at 8:30 in the morning to ask a question, raise a hand, or challenge anything that's being put forth here? Please.
I'd like to know, personally on your company's equipment, what's the maximum length of film that you can digitize? Is there a maximum?
Great question. There is no maximum. No. You can have a 50-foot piece of film. It'll take it all. As long as you have a server that can handle that size file. Now, the next question, that's the elephant in the room, is, well, how many megabytes is a typical piece of film? Well, I was given a piece of film this morning at breakfast to digitize, and here they are. That's maybe 30 or 40 megabytes, one piece of film. One piece. So you quickly build into terabytes. So the issue of storage and archiving is another issue. But that's a really good question. It's unlimited. Anybody else? Go ahead.
So I don't know a whole lot about this, but I've been told that the film still has a finer grain, you know, it's finer resolving power compared to computed radiography. I don't know about digital, I don't know about that, but what do you think about that? I mean, is that true, and do you think that's an issue?
Let me let the expert comment on that question. Steve?
Well, Jay claims to be the expert, but the resolution in a film radiograph is partially a function of the energy that you use to make that shot. So in some of the digitizing standards, they'll actually say, for this energy range, you know, you need a minimum resolution or pixel size of so-and-so, and on and on. So, yes, film inherently is a lot higher resolution because the emulsion is super thin, several microns, or just a few microns compared to a huge phosphor imaging layer. It's impossible to match that resolution. But again, because of the energy we use it to make the shot, you're never going to get that resolution in a iridium shot anyway. So there's a trade-off.
Please.
The resolution is one issue that's really important.
Yep.
It needs to be looked at and understood. But if you can't use the resolution, that's where the contrast sensitivity comes in. Then resolution is viewed, and that's what allows us to make that jump from film
To digital. Yes, exactly. And now, we can take this piece of film and we can digitize it 75 DPI, 150 DPI, 300 DPI, 600 DPI. Depends on what your customer wants to see, how much information. Now, some customers don't want it in Daikon D format. They just want it for PowerPoint presentations. They want it in TIFF or JPEG. You can do that. Convert it, realizing there's a consequence. What's the consequence? Oh, glad you asked. You lose 50 to 60% of the metadata in here once you make that conversion into a JPEG. This is not a photograph of a person. This has a lot of metadata in here that's 100% of which is captured in the digitizing process with the digitizer. Doesn't matter which digitizer you use, the concept is make it compatible with the inevitable CR, DR, and CT technologies that you're going to be using or are using. How many in here have purchased and invested in CR, DR, CT? Yeah, about 50%. All right, so we're I know who you are. Please.
Do you find that if the clients were servicing don't have high resolution monitors, that they're going to lose out on the clarity and quality of these scanners?
Okay, so the question is, does a customer that does not, or an inspector that does not have a high precision, high definition monitor, does he not see the information? That's basically the question, yeah? Okay, the answer is, go to our booth. We have a high-resolution monitor there. It's a 3-megapixel monitor. It costs $6,000. You see with your naked eye a lot more information